My name is Victoria Sterling, and at 32, I thought I knew my family. Then my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Emma. Hey Vic. Great news. Sold your old warehouse for $350. Dad said you'd be thrilled since it was just sitting empty anyway. My blood turned ice cold. That warehouse wasn't empty, and it wasn't worth $350,000. It was worth $14 million, and Emma had just stolen my entire future. What she didn't know was that I had security cameras recording everything. Before we dive into how my own sister betrayed me and how I got the sweetest revenge imaginable, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below, smash that like button if you're ready for some serious family drama, and hit subscribe because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when family loyalty meets cold hard cash and someone gets caught red-handed. I stared at that text message until my hands started shaking. The warehouse Emma was talking about wasn't some forgotten family property gathering dust. It was my life's work, my secret project, and my ticket to financial independence that I'd been carefully cultivating for 3 years. After my divorce from Marcus 2 years ago, I'd inherited the property from our grandmother's estate. While everyone in the family assumed it was just an old industrial building in a declining neighborhood, I saw potential. I'd quietly been converting it into luxury artist lofts, pouring every penny of my divorce settlement and my savings from my marketing job into the renovation. The neighborhood was gentrifying rapidly. Tech companies were moving in, coffee shops were opening, and property values were skyrocketing. I'd commissioned 3 separate appraisals over the past 6 months, and each one came back higher than the last. The most recent appraisal, completed just 2 weeks ago, valued the fully renovated warehouse at $14.2 million. I'd kept the project secret because I wanted to surprise my family once it was complete. Emma, my younger sister by 4 years, had always been jealous of anything I accomplished. When I got into Stanford, she sabotaged my acceptance letter by accidentally spilling coffee on it, forcing me to call admissions in a panic. When I landed my first corporate job, she spread rumors at family gatherings that I'd slept with the hiring manager. When Marcus and I got engaged, she tried to seduce him at my bachelorette party. But this was different. This was theft on a massive scale. I immediately called the real estate agent Emma had mentioned in her text. Patricia Hoffman had been in the business for 20 years and knew property law inside and out. When I explained the situation, her voice grew grave. Miss Sterling, I need to ask you something very important. Did you sign any power of attorney documents recently? Any paperwork giving your sister authority to act on your behalf? Absolutely not, I said, my voice barely controlled. That warehouse is solely in my name. I have all the documentation. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then what your sister did constitutes real estate fraud. The sale she conducted is completely illegal. But here's the thing, unwinding it is going to be complicated, especially if the buyer was acting in good faith. My mind raced. Who bought it? A development company called Morrison Holdings. They paid cash and closed quickly. But MS. Sterling, there's something else you should know. The listing price your sister set, $350,000, that's far below market value even for an unrenovated warehouse in that area. Any legitimate real estate professional should have questioned such a low price. That's when the pieces started falling into place. Emma hadn't acted alone. Someone had helped her, someone who knew enough about real estate to pull this off, but was either incredibly stupid or incredibly greedy. I drove straight to the warehouse, my heart pounding. The sold sign was already planted in the front yard like a dagger through my chest. But as I walked around the building, checking my hidden security cameras, I realized Emma had made a crucial mistake. She didn't know about the cameras. I'd installed a comprehensive security system 6 months ago when construction materials started going missing from other renovation projects in the area. 12 high-definition cameras covered every angle of the property, inside and out. They'd recorded everything, every meeting, every walkthrough, every conversation. Back home, I spent the next 4 hours reviewing footage. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. 3 weeks ago, Emma had brought someone to the property, a sleazy-looking man in an expensive suit who introduced himself to the cameras as Tony Morrison, presumably from Morrison Holdings. They'd walked through the building together, and I watched in horror as Emma pointed out features I'd spent months perfecting: the exposed brick walls I'd painstakingly restored, the custom lighting fixtures I'd imported from Italy, the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself. "The owner has no idea what this place is really worth," Emma said clearly into my hidden microphone. "She thinks it's just some old warehouse. If we price it right, we can flip it immediately for 10 times what we're asking." Tony Morrison nodded enthusiastically. "Your cut is what we agreed, 20% of the difference between the sale price and the real value. So if we sell for $350 and flip for $3 million, you're looking at over $500,000 in profit." Emma had grinned like a shark. She'll never know what hit her. Victoria always thought she was so smart, but she never pays attention to the details. She signed those family trust documents without reading them, just like I knew she would. My blood ran cold. What family trust documents? I frantically searched through my papers until I found them, documents that Emma had brought to me 6 months ago, right after my divorce was finalized. She'd claimed they were routine paperwork to update our grandmother's estate distribution, and I'd signed them without reading carefully because I was drowning in divorce paperwork and trusted my sister. I read them now with growing horror. Buried in the legal jargon was a clause that gave Emma limited power of attorney over any dormant family properties that remained undeveloped or unutilized for a period exceeding 1 year. She'd tricked me into signing away my rights to my own property. But as I read further, I realized Emma had made a critical error. The power of attorney was only valid if the property was truly dormant and undeveloped. My warehouse was clearly under active renovation, with permits filed, contractors hired, and substantial improvements made. I had receipts for over $800,000 in renovation costs, all dated after I'd supposedly signed over my rights. Emma's entire scheme was built on a lie that I could prove in court. I called Patricia back immediately. I found the documents Emma used, and I've got security footage of her admitting to fraud. What are my options? Patricia's voice brightened considerably. With video evidence of intentional deception and documentation proving active development of the property, you have multiple legal avenues. We can file for an emergency injunction to stop the sale, pursue criminal charges for real estate fraud, and sue for damages. But Ms. Sterling, there's something else we should consider. What? Instead of immediately shutting down the sale, we might want to let it proceed and then go after both Morrison Holdings and your sister for the full value. The damages would be much more substantial, and with your evidence, it would be an open and shut case. That's when I realized I wasn't just going to stop Emma's betrayal. I was going to destroy her. The next morning, I woke up with crystalline clarity. The hurt was still there, burning in my chest like acid, but it had transformed into something much more dangerous: calculated fury. Emma had spent our entire lives trying to tear me down, and I'd always taken the high road, always forgiven her, always believed that family meant something. Not anymore. I called in sick to work and spent the day building my case like the marketing strategist I was, except this time I was marketing justice. First, I contacted Marcus, my ex-husband. Despite our divorce, we'd remained on decent terms, and he was now a partner at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. When I explained what Emma had done, his lawyer instincts kicked in immediately. "Victoria, this is massive. We're talking about multiple felonies here: fraud, forgery, theft, conspiracy. The fact that she got you to sign those documents under false pretenses makes it even worse. She's looking at serious prison time." "I want more than prison time, Marcus. I want to destroy her financially and socially. She needs to understand that actions have consequences." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "There's something else you should know. Emma approached me 3 months ago, asking questions about your finances and whether you had any valuable assets from the divorce. I thought it was weird and didn't tell her anything, but now we know she was planning this for months." "Exactly. And if she's been planning it that long, there might be other people involved. Victoria, I think you need to hire a private investigator. That afternoon, I met with David Chin, a former police detective turned private investigator who specialized in white-collar crime. Within 2 hours of showing him my evidence, he was as invested in the case as I was. Your sister made some rookie mistakes, David said, scrolling through the security footage on his laptop. She's discussing criminal activity on camera, she's left a paper trail, and she's working with someone who's clearly done this before. Morrison Holdings isn't just buying your warehouse, they're running a sophisticated real estate scam. What do you mean? David pulled up a screen full of property records. I ran Toni Morrison's name through the database. In the past 2 years, Morrison Holdings has purchased 17 properties in gentrifying neighborhoods, all at significantly below market prices. In every case, the seller was either elderly, going through a personal crisis, or had limited real estate knowledge. It's a predatory business model. So Emma didn't just betray me. She partnered with career criminals. That's exactly what she did. And here's the beautiful part. The FBI has been investigating Morrison Holdings for real estate fraud for 8 months. Your case could be the key to bringing down their entire operation. I felt a smile spread across my face for the first time in 2 days. How do we make that happen? David leaned forward conspiratorially. We let the sale go through. We document everything. We gather evidence of their entire network. And then we strike all at once. Your sister won't just lose the money, she'll lose her freedom. But what about my warehouse? Trust me on this. By the time we're done, you'll get your warehouse back plus punitive damages that will make you rich enough to buy 10 more warehouses. The question is, how far are you willing to go? I thought about every time Emma had sabotaged me, every time she'd smiled to my face while stabbing me in the back, every family gathering where she'd played the innocent younger sister while plotting my destruction. As far as it takes. Over the next week, David and I built our case with military precision. We discovered that Emma had been feeding Morrison Holdings inside information about distressed property owners for over a year. She'd targeted divorced women, elderly widows, and small business owners facing financial difficulties. My warehouse wasn't her first victim. It was just her biggest score. Meanwhile, I played the part of the devastated but helpless sister. I called Emma, crying about how I'd discovered the sale and begging her to explain what had happened. She fed me a sob story about Dad being sick and needing expensive medical treatment, claiming she'd sold the warehouse to help with hospital bills. It was all lies. I called my parents immediately and discovered they were both perfectly healthy and had no idea what Emma had done. She told us you'd given her permission to handle the sale, my mother said, confusion clear in her voice. She said you were too busy with your new job to deal with it yourself. Mom, I never gave her permission. She forged documents and stole my property. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like forever. Finally, my father's voice came through, heavy with disappointment. Victoria, what exactly are you saying? I'm saying Emma committed real estate fraud. I have proof. And I'm going to make sure she faces the consequences. She's your sister. And I was her sister when she decided to steal $14 million from me. That conversation taught me something important. My parents had always enabled Emma's behavior. They'd always made excuses for her, always expected me to be the mature one who forgave and forgot. But not this time. I also discovered something else that week. Emma had been telling people at her job and in her social circle that she was about to come into a large inheritance. She'd already put a down payment on a new BMW and had started shopping for a house in an expensive neighborhood. She was spending money she didn't have yet, money she'd stolen from me. The beautiful irony was that Emma had no idea how valuable the warehouse actually was. She thought she was pulling off a moderately profitable scam, when in reality she'd just committed one of the largest real estate frauds in the city's recent history. David's investigation also revealed that Morrison Holdings had a specific playbook for these scams. They would identify properties with potential, find vulnerable sellers, and then flip the properties within 60 days for massive profits. The company had made over $30 million in fraudulent profits over the past 3 years. But their greed was about to be their downfall. The FBI wants to coordinate with us, David told me during one of our strategy sessions. If we time this right, we can take down the entire operation while maximizing your personal settlement. But it means waiting another few weeks while they build their federal case. I've waited 3 years to see this warehouse reach its potential, I said. I can wait a few more weeks to see Emma get what she deserves. What Emma didn't know was that every text message, every phone call, and every meeting was being documented. She was digging her own grave deeper every day, and she was too blinded by greed to notice. The trap was set. Now it was time to spring it. The following 3 weeks were the most difficult and exhilarating of my life. Every day, I had to pretend to be the grieving, defeated sister while secretly coordinating with federal investigators to build an airtight case against Emma and her criminal partners. Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI's white-collar crime division became my lifeline during this period. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her early 40s who had been tracking Morrison Holdings' fraudulent activities across 3 states. When David brought my case to her attention, she immediately recognized it as the breakthrough they needed. Your sister made the mistake of documenting everything, Agent Martinez explained during our first meeting at a downtown coffee shop. Her text messages, her recorded conversations on your security cameras, her financial transactions. She's created a prosecutor's dream case. But we need to be patient and let the investigation unfold naturally. The hardest part was watching Emma spend money that legally belonged to me. Through social media and mutual friends, I monitored her increasingly lavish lifestyle. She'd bought designer handbags, booked a vacation to Europe, and was making plans to purchase a house that cost more than most people's lifetime earnings. Each purchase was another nail in her legal coffin, but it was torture to watch. Meanwhile, Morrison Holdings was moving forward with their plans to flip my warehouse. Tony Morrison had brought in architects and contractors, completely oblivious to the fact that federal agents were monitoring their every move. The irony was delicious. They were improving my property with their own money while unknowingly building evidence for their own prosecution. David's surveillance revealed the full scope of their operation. Morrison Holdings wasn't just a real estate scam, it was a sophisticated criminal enterprise involving money laundering, tax evasion, and systematic fraud targeting vulnerable property owners. Emma had stumbled into something much bigger and more dangerous than she'd realized. Your sister is small-time compared to what these people do, David told me one afternoon as we reviewed surveillance photos. But she's made herself an essential part of their operation. She's not just a victim they can throw under the bus, she's a co-conspirator. That week, Emma called me, ostensibly to check on how I was handling the loss of the warehouse. Her voice was sickeningly sweet, dripping with fake concern. I know this has been hard for you, Vic, but you have to understand, Dad really needed that money for his medical bills. I couldn't just let him suffer when we had an asset sitting there unused. I gripped the phone tighter, reminding myself to stay in character. I understand, Emma. Family comes first. I just wish you'd talk to me about it first. I tried, but you're always so busy with work. And, honestly, you never seemed interested in that old building anyway. I thought I was doing you a favor by handling all the paperwork and negotiations. The casual gaslighting in her voice made my blood boil, but I forced myself to sound grateful. You're right. I probably would have just let it sit there forever. Maybe this is for the best. Emma's relieved laughter made me want to throw my phone against the wall. I'm so glad you see it that way. And who knows? Maybe Dad's treatment will go well, and we won't even need all the money. There might be some left over for both of us. After I hung up, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, shaking with rage. Emma wasn't just a thief. She was a manipulator who genuinely believed her own lies. She'd convinced herself that she was the hero of the story, saving our family through her clever business dealings. But while Emma was living in her fantasy world, the real world was closing in around her. Agent Martinez called me that Friday with an update that made my heart race with anticipation. We've identified 17 victims of Morrison Holdings' fraud scheme, and the total damages exceed $40 million. Your case is actually one of the smaller ones in terms of property value, but it's the best documented. We have everything we need to move forward. When? Next week. We'll execute search warrants simultaneously at Morrison Holdings offices, Toni Morrison's home, and your sister's apartment. We'll also freeze all their financial accounts and seize any assets purchased with fraudulent proceeds. I felt a surge of satisfaction so intense it was almost intoxicating. What should I do? Nothing. Act normal. Let your sister think she's gotten away with it. The element of surprise is crucial. That weekend, Emma posted photos on Instagram from her expensive European shopping trip, posing with luxury goods that she'd purchased with my stolen money. The comments from friends and family were full of congratulations and questions about her sudden wealth. Emma's responses were masterfully crafted lies about smart investments and family inheritance money. But one comment caught my attention. Our cousin Rebecca had written, "Emma, this is amazing. I had no idea you were so good with real estate. Maybe you could help me sell my mom's old house." Emma's response made my blood run cold. Absolutely. I have some amazing contacts who specialize in quick sales. We could probably get you more money than you'd expect. She was actively recruiting new victims from our own family. I immediately called Agent Martinez with this information. "We need to move faster," I told her. "She's trying to expand her operation, and she's targeting people I care about. Don't worry. We're moving on Monday. But Victoria, I need to prepare you for what's coming. When we arrest your sister, it's going to be very public. The media will pick up the story because of the dollar amounts involved. Your family relationships are going to be under a microscope." I thought about my parents, who still believed Emma's lies about helping with medical bills. I thought about Rebecca and other family members who had no idea they were potential victims. I thought about 20 years of Emma's manipulation and betrayal. "I can handle the publicity," I said. "What I can't handle is letting her destroy more lives." Monday morning arrived with unusual spring weather, bright sunshine, and clear skies that seemed inappropriate for what was about to unfold. I went to work as usual, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. Agent Martinez had promised to call me as soon as the arrests were made. At 11:30 a.m., my phone rang. "It's done," Agent Martinez said simply. "We have Toni Morrison, 3 other Morrison Holdings executives, and your sister in custody. We've also seized over $6 million in assets and frozen 12 bank accounts." I asked the question I'd been dreading. How did Emma react? Agent Martinez's voice carried a note of dark satisfaction. "She's claiming she had no idea Morrison Holdings was running a fraud scheme. She says she thought she was just helping a legitimate real estate investor find good deals. She's trying to play the innocent victim who got manipulated by sophisticated criminals." Do you believe her? Not for a second. We have recorded conversations of her discussing the fraudulent nature of the transactions. She knew exactly what she was doing. Her lawyer is going to try to negotiate a plea deal, but with the evidence we have, she's looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison. The satisfaction I felt was overwhelming, but it was complicated by an unexpected emotion: sadness. Despite everything Emma had done, she was still my sister. I'd grown up loving her, protecting her, believing in her potential to be better. Watching her destroy her life through greed and betrayal was devastating, even when she deserved the consequences. But that sadness was quickly overwhelmed by something else: vindication. For the first time in my adult life, Emma was going to face real consequences for her actions. No one was going to make excuses for her, no one was going to bail her out, and no one was going to expect me to forgive and forget. The warehouse that Emma had stolen from me would be returned, along with substantial punitive damages from Morrison Holdings assets. More importantly, Emma's criminal enterprise had been stopped before she could destroy more families. The war was far from over, but I'd won the most important battle. And Emma was about to learn that some betrayals come with a price that can't be negotiated away. The news of Emma's arrest spread through our family like wildfire, but not in the way I'd expected. Instead of shock and condemnation, I encountered something far more disturbing: denial and blame shifting that made me question everything I thought I knew about my relatives. My mother called me within hours of the arrest, her voice shrill with panic. "Victoria, you have to do something. Emma says this is all a misunderstanding. She was just trying to help the family, and now she's facing serious prison time because of some paperwork mistake." "Mom, it wasn't a paperwork mistake. She stole $14 million from me and committed federal fraud." "But she's your sister. How could you let them arrest her? Families are supposed to protect each other." The conversation that followed was one of the most painful of my life. My parents, the people who had raised me to believe in honesty and integrity, were asking me to lie to federal investigators to protect Emma. They wanted me to claim that I'd actually given her permission to sell the warehouse, that the whole thing was a family misunderstanding blown out of proportion. "I won't perjure myself to save someone who tried to destroy my life," I told them firmly. "She made a mistake, Victoria. People make mistakes. Stealing $14 million isn't a mistake, Mom. It's a calculated crime that she planned for months." When I hung up that phone call, I realized that my relationship with my parents was probably over. They'd made their choice, and it wasn't me. Meanwhile, the FBI investigation was revealing the true scope of Morrison Holdings' criminal enterprise. Agent Martinez called me with updates that made my head spin. Tony Morrison had been running real estate fraud schemes for over a decade, targeting vulnerable property owners across the Southeast. Emma wasn't his first inside accomplice. She was just his most successful one. "Your sister provided Morrison Holdings with detailed information about potential victims in your social and family networks," Agent Martinez explained. She'd identified at least 12 other properties belonging to friends and relatives that met their criteria for fraud targets. The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. Emma hadn't just stolen from me, she'd been systematically cataloging the assets of everyone we knew, turning our family connections into a target list for criminals. But the most shocking revelation came when David's investigation uncovered Emma's financial records. The money she'd been spending so lavishly wasn't just from my warehouse sale. She'd been receiving regular payments from Morrison Holdings for over 18 months. My warehouse was just her biggest score in a long-running criminal partnership. "She's made over $600,000 providing inside information to these people," David told me, showing me bank records that made my stomach turn. "Your property sale was supposed to be her retirement plan." That week, the local media picked up the story, and it exploded across social platforms. "Sister's real estate betrayal leads to federal fraud bust" became a trending topic, with thousands of comments from people sharing their own stories of family betrayal and financial fraud. Emma's friends and coworkers started coming forward with their own disturbing revelations. She'd been pumping them for information about their financial situations, their family properties, their personal struggles. Several people realized in hindsight that Emma had been conducting intelligence gathering disguised as friendly concern. The most damning evidence came from Emma's own phone records. Federal investigators discovered that she'd been secretly recording conversations with family members and friends, gathering information about valuable assets that might be vulnerable to fraud schemes. She'd recorded me without my knowledge dozens of times, including conversations about my divorce settlement and renovation plans. My cousin Rebecca called me, sobbing, "Victoria, I'm so sorry. I had no idea what Emma was doing. She asked me so many questions about Mom's house, about the family business, about Uncle Robert's rental properties. I thought she was just being friendly, but she was casing us like we were bank robbery targets." The psychological impact was devastating. Everyone in our extended family was questioning their interactions with Emma, wondering what information they'd unknowingly provided to her criminal enterprise. Trust that had been built over decades was shattered in a matter of days. But while our family was falling apart, my professional vindication was complete. Morrison Holdings assets were being liquidated to compensate their victims, and early estimates suggested that I would receive not only my warehouse back, but also substantial punitive damages. The federal seizure had recovered enough money to make me wealthier than I'd ever imagined possible. More importantly, Emma's arrest had prevented dozens of other families from experiencing the same betrayal I'd endured. Agent Martinez told me that Morrison Holdings had been planning to expand their operation into 3 new states, with Emma as their regional coordinator. Your willingness to cooperate with this investigation probably saved hundreds of families from financial devastation, she said. Emma wasn't just stealing from you, she was building a criminal network that could have operated for years. The warehouse that Emma had tried to steal was officially returned to me within 2 weeks of her arrest. When I walked through the property that Morrison Holdings had been renovating, I was stunned by the improvements they'd made with their own fraudulent money. The space was even more beautiful than I'd originally envisioned, and property appraisers now valued it at over $16 million. But the sweetest moment came when I received a call from Toni Morrison's lawyer. Morrison Holdings was facing complete bankruptcy due to federal asset seizure, and they were desperate to negotiate plea deals that might reduce their prison sentences. Mr. Morrison would like to personally apologize to you, the lawyer said. He realizes now that your sister misrepresented the legal status of the property, and he wants to make amends. I couldn't help but laugh. Mr. Morrison can apologize to me from federal prison. I'm not interested in making amends with career criminals. The lawyer's voice became more desperate. Ms. Sterling, my client is willing to provide additional information about other real estate fraud schemes if you would consider writing a letter to the judge supporting a reduced sentence. Your client can provide that information to federal prosecutors as part of his legal obligation to cooperate. He won't be getting any sympathy letters from his victims. When I hung up that phone call, I felt a satisfaction so complete it was almost spiritual. Emma and her criminal partners had tried to destroy my life, and instead they'd made me richer and more powerful than ever before. But more than the money, I'd gained something invaluable, the knowledge that I could protect myself and fight back against anyone who tried to exploit me. Emma was scheduled for sentencing in 6 weeks, and federal prosecutors were recommending the maximum penalty due to the scope of her criminal enterprise and her lack of remorse. Her dreams of easy money and luxury lifestyle had transformed into a nightmare of federal prosecution and inevitable imprisonment. Justice wasn't just being served, it was being served ice cold, exactly the way Emma deserved it. The weeks leading up to Emma's sentencing were surreal. While she sat in federal custody awaiting her fate, I was living through the most professionally and financially successful period of my life. The warehouse renovation was completed using funds recovered from Morrison Holdings, and I'd already received multiple offers from developers wanting to purchase or lease the luxury artist lofts. But the personal cost of Emma's betrayal continued to ripple through every aspect of my life. My parents hired an expensive criminal defense attorney for Emma, draining their retirement savings in a desperate attempt to reduce her sentence. When they called asking me to contribute to her legal fees, I declined so firmly that my mother hung up on me and didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. "You're destroying this family," my father told me during what would be our last conversation. "Emma made a mistake, but you're the one choosing to tear us all apart." The irony was staggering. Emma had committed federal crimes, stolen millions of dollars, and betrayed everyone who trusted her, but somehow I was the villain for refusing to help cover up her actions. The family dynamics I'd grown up with were so toxic that they'd normalized Emma's behavior while demonizing my pursuit of justice. Agent Martinez kept me updated on the broader implications of the case. Morrison Holdings' criminal enterprise had affected 43 families across 4 states, with total damages exceeding $60 million. Emma's cooperation had been crucial to their operation, and federal prosecutors were building a case that would send Toni Morrison to prison for 25 to 30 years. "Your sister's lawyer is still trying to negotiate a plea deal," Agent Martinez told me during one of our final meetings. "They're claiming she was manipulated by sophisticated criminals who took advantage of her financial desperation." "What financial desperation?" I asked. "Emma has a good job and no major expenses." "She wasn't desperate, she was greedy." That's exactly what the prosecutor plans to argue. Emma's financial records show steady income and minimal debt. She participated in this scheme because she wanted luxury goods and status symbols, not because she needed money for survival. The week before sentencing, Emma's lawyer made one final attempt to contact me. He wanted me to testify about Emma's character, to tell the judge about her positive qualities and potential for rehabilitation. The request was so absurd that I almost laughed. "Your client spent 18 months planning to steal my life savings," I told him. "She recorded private conversations without my knowledge, provided my personal information to criminals, and tried to defraud multiple family members. What positive character traits would you like me to discuss?" "She's a young woman who made poor choices under the influence of career criminals," he replied desperately. "She has no prior criminal record, and she's the mother of 2 young children who need her." That last part stopped me cold. Emma doesn't have children. The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. Emma's lawyer was so desperate that he was making up fictional circumstances to generate sympathy. "Mr. Patterson," I said slowly, "if you present false information to the federal judge during sentencing, you'll be committing perjury. I suggest you stick to facts that can actually be verified." The sentencing hearing was held on a gray Tuesday morning in downtown federal court. I sat in the gallery, watching Emma face the consequences of her choices for the first time in her adult life. She looked smaller than I remembered, dressed in an orange jumpsuit that made her appear young and vulnerable. But when she spoke to the judge, asking for mercy and claiming to be a victim of manipulation, her words were the same calculated lies she'd been telling our entire lives. She painted herself as an innocent sister trying to help her family, who'd been deceived by sophisticated criminals into participating in schemes she didn't understand. "Your Honor," she said, tears streaming down her face, "I never intended to hurt anyone. I thought I was helping my family through a difficult time, and I trusted people who took advantage of my goodwill." Federal prosecutor Amanda Richards demolished Emma's victim narrative with surgical precision. She presented phone recordings of Emma discussing the fraudulent nature of the transactions, bank records showing her systematic profits from criminal activity, and evidence of her attempts to recruit new victims from our family network. "The defendant wasn't manipulated by criminals, Your Honor. She was a criminal who actively participated in systematic fraud targeting vulnerable property owners. Her betrayal of family trust was particularly calculated and cruel, as she used intimate knowledge of her victims' personal and financial situations to maximize the damage her crimes inflicted." Judge Patricia Nguyen listened to both sides before delivering a sentence that exceeded even my expectations. Emma received 12 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. She was also ordered to pay full restitution to all fraud victims, totaling over $40 million. "Ms. Sterling," Judge Nguyen said, looking directly at Emma, "your crimes weren't crimes of desperation or necessity. They were crimes of greed and betrayal that targeted the people who trusted you most. The sophistication of your criminal enterprise and your complete lack of remorse leave me no choice but to impose a sentence that reflects the severity of your actions." As federal marshals led Emma away in shackles, she looked back at me with an expression I'd never seen before: pure hatred. Not remorse, not apology, not even defeat. Just rage that her carefully planned scheme had been exposed and punished. My parents were sobbing in the gallery, still convinced that their younger daughter was somehow the victim in this situation. They didn't speak to me before leaving the courthouse, and I knew our relationship was permanently fractured. But as I walked out of that federal courthouse, I felt lighter than I'd felt in months. Emma would spend the next 12 years paying for her crimes, during which time I would build the life she'd tried to steal from me. The warehouse project that she'd attempted to destroy would generate millions in revenue, funding not just my financial security, but also charitable work with fraud victims. Agent Martinez stopped me on the courthouse steps. "Victoria, I want you to know that your courage in pursuing this case prevented dozens of other families from experiencing the same betrayal. Emma's criminal network was expanding rapidly, and your willingness to seek justice stopped them before they could destroy more lives. That evening, I stood in my renovated warehouse, looking at the luxury artist lofts that Emma had tried to steal. The space was more beautiful than I'd ever imagined, filled with natural light and creative energy. Artists were already moving in, transforming the building into the thriving creative community I'd envisioned. Emma had tried to destroy my dreams, but instead she'd given me the strength to exceed them. The betrayal that was meant to break me had made me unbreakable. 2 years have passed since Emma's sentencing, and the transformation in my life has been remarkable. The warehouse project exceeded every projection I'd made, generating enough revenue to expand into 2 additional properties in the Arts District. What Emma had tried to steal became the foundation for a real estate empire worth over $50 million. But the most profound changes weren't financial, they were personal. The trauma of Emma's betrayal forced me to examine every relationship in my life, distinguishing between people who genuinely cared about me and those who simply wanted to use me. The process was painful but ultimately liberating. My parents and I haven't spoken since the sentencing hearing. They visit Emma in federal prison monthly and have made it clear that they blame me for destroying the family by refusing to enable her criminal behavior. Their choice to support a convicted felon over their law-abiding daughter revealed values I couldn't respect or accept. The silence from them hurt initially, but it was replaced by something unexpected: peace. I no longer had to walk on eggshells around Emma's volatility or manage my parents' expectations that I should constantly forgive unforgivable behavior. For the first time in my adult life, I was free from the toxic family dynamics that had shaped my entire identity. Instead, I built what therapists call a chosen family, relationships based on mutual respect rather than blood obligation. Marcus and I rekindled our friendship, bonded by shared experiences of Emma's manipulation. David Chin became not just my private investigator, but a trusted friend who understood the complexity of seeking justice against family members. Most surprisingly, I connected with other victims of Morrison Holdings' fraud scheme. We formed an informal support network that evolved into something much larger, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping fraud victims navigate legal proceedings and rebuild their financial lives. Agent Martinez joined our advisory board after retiring from the FBI, bringing crucial expertise about white-collar crime prevention. "What you've built here is remarkable," she told me during our organization's first annual fundraiser. "You've transformed personal trauma into a resource that's helping hundreds of families recover from financial crimes." The nonprofit work gave my success deeper meaning. Every family we helped represented a victory over the kind of predatory behavior that Emma and Morrison Holdings had perfected. We'd prevented dozens of real estate fraud schemes and recovered millions in stolen assets for victims who thought they'd never see justice. But perhaps the most satisfying development came from an unexpected source: other inmates at Emma's federal prison. Through the prison grapevine, I learned that Emma's reputation for betraying family members had made her deeply unpopular among women who valued loyalty above everything else. She'd been ostracized by other inmates who viewed her crimes as particularly despicable. "Family betrayal is considered worse than most other crimes in here," a former inmate told me during a fraud prevention speaking engagement. "Women who steal from strangers get more respect than women who steal from their own sisters. Your sister learned that lesson the hard way." Emma had written me dozens of letters from prison, alternating between apologies and accusations, but I'd never responded. Reading her communications revealed the same manipulative patterns she'd used our entire lives: claiming victimhood, demanding forgiveness, and threatening emotional consequences if I didn't comply with her wishes. But I was no longer susceptible to emotional manipulation. The woman who had signed suspicious documents without reading them was gone, replaced by someone who verified everything, trusted carefully, and prioritized her own well-being over other people's comfort. The warehouse that started this entire saga had become more than just a business success. It was a symbol of resilience and transformation. The artist lofts were fully occupied by creators whose work brought beauty and meaning to our community. Walking through the space that Emma had tried to steal filled me with profound satisfaction every single day. 6 months ago, I received unexpected news. Morrison Holdings' remaining assets were being liquidated, and victims would receive additional compensation beyond the original restitution orders. My share would total over $3 million, money that I immediately donated to fraud prevention programs and victim advocacy organizations. The gesture wasn't just about helping others, it was about proving that Emma's betrayal had made me stronger and more generous, not bitter and closed off. She'd tried to destroy my capacity for trust and compassion, but instead she'd enhanced both qualities by teaching me to direct them toward people who deserve them. Last month, I ran into Rebecca at a coffee shop downtown. She'd been following my nonprofit work and wanted to thank me for preventing her mother from becoming another fraud victim. "I keep thinking about how different things could have been if you hadn't fought back," she said. Emma would still be recruiting victims from our family, and we'd all be walking around with targets on our backs. "Sometimes fighting back is the most loving thing you can do," I replied. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone else who might get hurt if destructive behavior goes unchecked." As Emma approaches the midpoint of her 12-year sentence, I occasionally wonder whether she's learned anything from the consequences of her choices. But I've realized that her personal growth isn't my responsibility or concern. My job was to seek justice and protect potential future victims, both of which I accomplished completely. The woman who received that devastating text message 2 years ago was naive, trusting, and vulnerable to manipulation. The woman I've become is strategic, discerning, and unshakable in her commitment to justice. Emma's betrayal was supposed to destroy me, but instead it forged me into someone stronger than I'd ever imagined possible. Looking back, I can see that Emma's scheme was doomed from the moment she decided to target someone who genuinely loved her. If she'd stolen from a stranger, she might have gotten away with it. But because she betrayed family bonds, she created an enemy with intimate knowledge of her weaknesses and an unlimited motivation for revenge. The greatest irony is that Emma possessed all the intelligence and charm necessary to build legitimate wealth and success. Instead, she chose the path of criminal shortcuts that led to federal prison and permanent disgrace. Her story serves as a cautionary tale about the ultimate cost of choosing greed over integrity. Have you ever had someone close to you betray your trust in a way that changed how you see family loyalty? Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become the ones we need protection from. What would you have done in my situation? Prioritized family peace or fought for justice? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama where karma delivers the justice that people truly deserve. Share this in the comments with anyone who needs to hear that fighting back against family betrayal isn't cruel, it's necessary. And remember, choosing yourself over toxic family dynamics isn't selfish, it's survival. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior, even when it comes from people you've loved your entire life. Justice served cold tastes sweeter than any revenge, and building a better life is always the best response to betrayal.